Day 21. Federal Courthouse. The hour before dusk. Sunlight slants across the polished marble floor, catching the edge of the pews like it's carving shadows into glass. The courtroom, until now a steady hum of rustling papers and whispered legal jargon, falls breathless. She enters, Ariana Grande, without a sound and without announcement. She's dressed in full black, no glitter, no heels, no entourage, just stillness wrapped in silk. She doesn't scan the room. She doesn't acknowledge the press bench, nor the attorneys shifting in their seats. She walks with precision, not grace, like someone walking into a graveyard, not a courtroom. Her eyes are cast slightly downward, and in one pale hand, a folded piece of paper, its edges slightly torn, gripped too tightly, swings at her side like it knows its weight. The murmurs don't rise, they dissolve. Phones go still. No one dares lift a camera. Even the courtroom sketch artist, mid-stroke, lowers her pencil. She pauses for a beat. Her gaze lifts once, and it isn't toward Diddy. It isn't toward the judge. It lands, gently, piercingly, on a woman in the third row. A woman with trembling hands and sunglasses on indoors. That look, wordless, surgical, rips something loose in the air. The kind of shift you don't hear, but feel behind your ribs. The judge clears her throat, mouth parting as if to speak, but doesn't. And in that second, the kind of second that stretches far too long, something invisible tightens around the room. Ariana walks to the witness bench, but does not sit. The folded paper stays clutched in her hand, like a relic, like a fuse. No one knows why she's here, but everyone, lawyers, journalists, bailiffs, ghosts, feels suddenly smaller in their suits, smaller in their power, smaller in their knowing. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Some voices don't rise. They arrive like a funeral march and turn empires into echoes. The room doesn't exhale. It adjusts. Subtly, like someone opening a window no one asked for. On the record, it's just another document, a sealed exhibit quietly entered into evidence at 2:41 p.m. No announcement, no dramatic delivery. Just a simple folder placed into the court clerk's hands, accompanied by a silent nod from the assistant district attorney. But the weight of it hits like a stone dropped in deep water. The clerk unfolds it slowly, as if the paper might burn. The judge, half lowered into her chair, glances down, her brows tense. For a moment, she doesn't read aloud. She just reads. Then, almost under her breath, like a name she didn't expect to meet again, she says it. Exhibit 84B, involving the 2015 incident, Property Suite 903, Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, includes audio archive, internal photograph, and a redacted non-disclosure agreement. The silence thickens. Then the final line. Involved party, Ariana Grande, listed as witness under confidential terms. There's no gasp, no shout. That would be too easy. Instead, reporters shift in their chairs. Some scribble, some don't. Because no one knows what they've just heard. Not exactly, but they know it wasn't supposed to happen. Diddy's lead attorney doesn't flinch. She keeps her pen moving, underlining something irrelevant on her pad. But Diddy loses his eyes. He doesn't blink, just stops seeing, like something opened in his mind and pulled him somewhere too far back to stand. A junior legal aide beside him tries to hand him a note. He doesn't take it. Across the aisle, Ariana remains still, not stiff, not performative, just present, like a monument. She doesn't react. That somehow says more than if she had. A bailiff shifts. The gallery murmurs. Someone drops a pen that clatters louder than it should. The judge glances over her glasses and the room snaps back into posture, but not into comfort. Because now the question isn't what's in the file. The question is, why was her name buried for this long? And what happens when you let that name surface? The assistant district attorney stands, voice measured, hands folded, eyes fixed on no one in particular. No further comment at this time. We request sealed review. But the courtroom has already changed. Even the air feels different, like dust disturbed after years of silence. One of the older court reporters, a woman with decades of trials behind her, leans over to the intern beside her and whispers something too quiet to catch. The intern doesn't nod. She just stares forward, mouth slightly parted, pen trembling in her grip. Because this wasn't supposed to come back. Because some names carry with them the rooms they were forced to leave. And this courtroom, with its history, its wealth, its performance of control, suddenly feels like it just remembered something it had tried to forget. Not a case, not a document. A girl in a hallway. A door that never should have closed. A song that never played. The breathing is different now. Like the room is holding something in. And whatever it is, it's not going away quietly. August 30th, 2015. Miami. The night breathes in velvet. The Fontainebleau's upper floors shimmer with the residue of post-VMA excess. Outside, the ocean hums against the coastline like a secret too big to keep. But inside, the light is red, low, intimate, the kind of lighting that flatters danger. There's music playing somewhere in the suite, soft with too much bass, like a heartbeat under a floorboard. In the main room, crystal glasses clink and clatter. Champagne foams over the rims. Photographers glide like ghosts through clouds of perfume and sweat, capturing moments that beg to be remembered, and some that beg to be buried. Diddy stands at the center of it all, loud in laughter, commanding without words. He's draped in a gold silk shirt, open at the collar, sleeves rolled, surrounded by handlers, collaborators, and those who orbit power like moths near a flame. And then there's Ariana. She's near the bar, not drinking, just holding the glass. Silver dress, hair pulled tight into a ponytail that looks more like armor than style. There's a distance in her eyes. Not boredom, not coldness, but calculation. Like she's waiting for the night to end, or for a moment to pass that hasn't happened yet. The cameras flash. She turns away. A woman leans in and says something in her ear. Ariana nods once, faintly. She doesn't smile. Someone beckons her from the far end of the suite. Diddy. He holds a mic like a scepter and says something too loud, something that makes others laugh. But Ariana doesn't laugh. She walks toward him, slowly. Then, it fractures, a hallway, narrow, off to the side, away from the music and lights. It's quiet here, just two voices, just a conversation no one else hears. And then, a camera flash, not staged, not posed, a grainy photograph. Mid-turn, Ariana's arm reaching back, not forward. Diddy standing close, too close. Her eyes aren't caught in surprise. They're caught in knowing. There's something off about the image, something that sticks under the skin. The angle's too low, the hallway too dark. Her face, unreadable, but not okay. The photo never made it to press. It was intercepted, buried. Later, the whispers begin. Someone says a door wouldn't open. Another says they heard crying in the bathroom. One woman claims Ariana called someone, but hung up before the phone even rang. A song was supposed to be played that night. Something unreleased, a demo Diddy had wanted for Bad Boys' revival. Ariana never sang it, never spoke of it again. By 3:07 a.m., hotel security logs record Ariana leaving the suite. She's no longer in silver. She's in a black hoodie, hair down, face bare. She doesn't take the main elevator. She takes the back stairwell. A handler follows behind, saying nothing. In the suite, the party continues. Louder now, almost performative, like it's trying to erase what just happened. But on the marble counter by the minibar, someone finds a napkin, crumpled, stained with lipstick, smeared. Two words written in frantic red pen, "Don't let him near her again." The napkin disappears by morning. No one speaks of it. The photo is filed away. The song is shelved. The hallway becomes a memory no one wants. But memories, they don't forget just because people do. It starts, as these things always do now, with a leak. At 12:03 a.m., less than 10 hours after Day 21's courtroom adjourns, TMZ uploads a cropped image. No headline, no full story, just a partial screenshot of an exhibit's cover page, submitted in federal court. The name is blurred, but not enough. To most, it's a redacted file. Routine. Forgettable. But to Ariana's fans, the real ones, the ones who catalog every detail like sacred scripture, the formatting says everything. The document style, Republic Records, the watermark, a known font used only for unreleased vocal contracts. The date, August 31st, 2015. They already know. Within hours, TikTok turns into a forensic crime scene. Creators with usernames like at Moonlight, Forensics, and at Grandeur stitch together timelines with obsessive precision. Clips resurface, fast, breathless, time-stamped with grief. Why did Ariana disappear from the public eye from October 2015 to June 2016? Why was her collab with that bad boy producer suddenly scrapped mid-rollout? Why did her tour rehearsal footage show a version of Only If You Knew that was never released? One video slows down an old interview from 2016. Ariana sits across from a radio host, asks casually about her time in Miami. Her smile falters for half a second. The frame freezes. The voiceover whispers, "She blinked." That's not just a blink. That's a flinch. The theories flood the algorithm like water through cracks. By sunrise, every fan account has posted a version of the image. The name still blurred, but the shape of the truth, sharp and unmistakable, cuts through anyway. Day 22. The courthouse is different now. Paparazzi flank the sidewalk like wolves in suits, not the usual press corps, not the reporters assigned to federal trials. These are the tabloid veterans, the chaos hunters, the ones who smell blood in silence. But Ariana doesn't return. Her absence feels louder than her arrival. Reporters whisper she was never subpoenaed, that her presence on day 21 was intentional, that it wasn't for the court. It was for someone sitting 3 rows back. Inside, the trial continues, procedural, methodical, trying desperately to return to rhythm. But the rhythm is off, because something cracked, and that sound, faint as it was, is still echoing. And now, others begin to move. One by one, women start posting, not statements, not names, just symbols. A broken mirror reflected in a car window, a hummingbird in a cage, a screenshot of a lyric sheet, redacted lines circled in crimson ink. They post nothing else, no captions, no tags, but the meaning vibrates under the surface. The internet knows how to read in metaphor now. It's fluent in silence. A woman formerly employed by a well-known East Coast label posts a photo of hotel carpet, the same pattern as the Fontainebleau's, with no comment. A backup dancer once seen in the background of Diddy's 2015 birthday bash posts an empty hallway photo. Just shadows, just quiet. And then, one post that stops everything. An Instagram story, gone in 24 hours from a private celebrity archive account. A photo from the VMA after party that same weekend. Blurry, overexposed, Ariana in silver, Diddy in gold. A hallway door visible in the background, captioned only with 2015. We saw everything. We just didn't know what we were seeing. It hits like a confession, not of guilt, of regret. The kind of regret that settles in long after the flashbulbs fade. When you realize the camera caught something human you weren't brave enough to recognize at the time. Now the whispers don't just circulate, they mutate. This isn't just about a sealed exhibit. This is about something that should have been seen and wasn't, or worse, was seen and ignored. And the world suddenly, collectively, begins to wonder, what else did we miss? And what happens when the whispers start to remember? What silence forced them to forget? Day 23. The air is quieter than it should be. No Ariana, no leaks, no photos at the courthouse entrance. Just a strange calm, the kind that settles when everyone knows something heavy is about to be said, and no one wants to be the one to breathe first. She enters quietly. No heels, no statement outfit, just a charcoal blouse, navy slacks, a faded leather notebook clutched in one hand. Her name isn't known to the public, not yet. But in the room, some of the older journalists glance up, recognition flickering behind furrowed brows. Danielle Mercer, age 38, former assistant to a celebrity photographer, now a digital archivist for a media law firm in Chicago. She takes the stand with no ceremony, no tears, just stillness. The kind that comes after you've had years to rehearse the weight of a truth no one ever asked you to tell. Her voice isn't loud. It doesn't have to be. She doesn't talk about Ariana, not directly. She talks about 2015. There was a shift that year, she begins, looking toward no one and everyone all at once. We stopped archiving what we saw. We started archiving what we were told to remember. She speaks of backrooms, of hush-hush phone calls between studios and syndicates, of hard drives mysteriously corrupted, metadata changed overnight. We had this folder. We jokingly called it the gravity well. Anything with Diddy went through it first. She explains how raw files were routed through private VPNs before they ever hit the agency servers. How certain timestamps were edited to make photos seem days old. How she was once instructed to delete a batch of backups after a particularly sensitive shoot involving 3 unnamed artists, one of them known for ponytails and platinum. The courtroom doesn't gasp. It doesn't need to, because everyone is listening differently now. The rhythm of testimony has changed. These aren't accusations. These are instructions left behind. A blueprint of how influence is built not through exposure, but through erasure. She recalls a moment that sticks. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. We had a photo, she says, a throwaway shot from a VMA afterparty. The lighting was awful. The angle was bad. You could barely see their faces. But he still asked for it, personally. By name, she doesn't say the names. She doesn't need to. The judge leans slightly forward now. A clerk stops typing. Diddy's team remains still. But the stillness feels too precise, too measured, like a script rehearsed in silence. She recalls being told to falsify the shot's metadata, to make it look like it had been taken a day earlier, at a different location. The original timestamp? Deleted, rewritten. Why, she was told, because if the story ever breaks, the timing matters. She says the phrase still plays in her head sometimes, when she tries to sleep. The timing matters. Not the truth, just the timing. The defense doesn't cross-examine much. A few technical questions about server protocol. Nothing that dents the core of what she says. Because the damage isn't in the details. It's in the feeling. This isn't just about Diddy. It's about what power looks like off camera. It's about how truth gets folded, buried, labeled, sealed. Not with violence, but with instruction, with routine, with the quiet terror of obeying because questioning feels dangerous. Danielle closes her notebook, stands. One foot lingers before stepping down. A pause. Not hesitation, punctuation. And then her final words. There are some faces we're told never to capture, because when the truth develops, it stains. She walks out of the courtroom alone. No one claps, no one shouts, but no one forgets her. Because sometimes the first person to speak doesn't scream. They just develop the negative and leave it in the light long enough for the picture to appear. The room is still again, but not with reverence, with dread. There's a kind of silence that doesn't invite peace. It demands witness. And on day 24, that silence has a name. It's written on the docket in careful serif. Maya Reeves, 29. She walks in slowly, not from age, but from the heaviness of memory. Her frame is small, but her presence is impossible to overlook. Not because she's famous. She's not. She was never meant to be seen, only heard. Backup vocalist, credited once, unnamed often. But today, she is neither backup nor silent. She takes the stand with a paper cup clutched in both hands like it's the only thing tethering her to the moment. The condensation slides between her fingers. Her thumb taps once, twice, a silent rhythm of nerves that never quite stills. She clears her throat softly and begins. It was August, Miami. That weekend was like heat wrapped in sound. No one interrupts. No one dares to. She talks about rehearsals in the afternoon. The kind of rehearsals where the air feels tight, where mistakes aren't corrected. They're punished with silence. She remembers Ariana arriving late to a sound check, eyes shadowed under heavy lashes, lips pressed too tight for lipstick. You could hear she didn't want to be there. Not in her voice, but in the spaces between the notes, like her breath was somewhere else. Maya remembers the after-party. The velvet lights, the champagne that tasted like metal, the laughter that came too loud from Diddy's corner of the room. She remembers the way Ariana lingered near the exits, never seated too long, dressed in silver, hair pulled tight like armor, like restraint. Then, the hotel, a hallway, a closed door. I was staying on the same floor. We all were. I walked past around midnight. I heard music at first. Then it changed. She pauses. The cup in her hands quivers slightly. One finger wipes a drop of water that doesn't fall. It wasn't music anymore. It was distortion, like someone dragging a needle across the vinyl. She doesn't say she heard screaming, but she doesn't have to. She says the sound made her stop walking, made her press her palm to the wallpaper, as if the building could confess something it didn't want to say. There was shouting, then quiet, then something sharp. Not like breaking, like breaking down. She never knocks. She's 21 at the time. No one tells backup vocalists to intervene, only to stay in key, stay on call, stay invisible. But she waited. She sat on the floor of that hallway, across from the door, and waited for something she couldn't name to be over. She says Ariana came out at 3:07 a.m. Different dress, no shoes, eyes not red, just gone. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She looked like someone who left the room, but not with her body. There's a breath across the courtroom, not a gasp. Something deeper, a recognition. Maya turns her head toward the gallery. Doesn't look at Diddy, doesn't need to. The hallway felt like an aquarium, she says, like we were all watching something drown and calling it dancing. Someone at the back stifles a cry. The judge doesn't stop her. Because this isn't testimony. This is truth remembered out loud. She recounts how she saw Ariana later that week in the studio. Silent again. The headphones too large for her ears. The mic too cold. No verses recorded that day. Just humming. One note over and over. A note Maya still dreams about. It was like she was trying to keep something from falling apart by holding it in her throat. The courtroom hasn't moved. Even the stenographer looks up, unsure if spelling matters anymore when feeling is the language being spoken. Maya's voice begins to crack. Not from tears, but from exhaustion. Like she's been holding this weight for so long that saying it out loud is a form of collapse. She speaks of the industry's silence after. The way her pay stopped increasing, the way certain producers stopped returning her calls. She was told, not directly but in code, that she should stop talking about that weekend. And so she didn't. Not until now. She places the paper cup on the witness stand. Empty, useless. And she says, "They said we'd be silenced." A pause. A breath. But silence is where my voice survived. No one speaks. Because in that moment, everyone hears her. Not just her words, but the song that never got recorded. The scream that never made it past the wall. The hallway, still flooded, not with sound, but with memory. And memory doesn't fade when you turn the music off. It lingers, like a chorus no one dares to sing, but everyone remembers. Day 25 begins without him. There's no announcement, no explanation, just an absence that sits in his place like fog on stone. Heavy, clinging, undeniable. The bench reserved for Diddy is neatly aligned, untouched. His nameplate stares forward like a hollow echo, as if even it is unsure of what it represents anymore. He misses the next day too, and then he returns. But not as the man who first walked into this courthouse. That man, the mogul cloaked in tailored arrogance, the empire builder with sunglasses too dark for truth, is gone. What arrives on day 27 is something less, or perhaps something revealed. A reporter scribbles quickly in the back row. He no longer walks in. He arrives like a shadow trailing a verdict. Diddy steps into the room, hunched under the weight of something that was never designed to be seen. His suit, though crisp, doesn't hang with power anymore. It clings, like it knows he's shrinking inside it. His hands twitch, not dramatically, but enough that the courtroom notices. One thumb constantly rubs over his palm like he's trying to erase something only he can feel. The once unshakable legal team grows tense around him. They speak more often, louder, too loud. Objections are sharper, less strategic, more like shields thrown at ghosts. Outside, the media begins rewatching old clips. Interviews that once played as charisma now resurface as prophecies in plain sight. A 2007 clip where Diddy jokes about always having eyes on the studio, even when I'm not there. A 2011 panel where he chuckles and says, "You don't need to hear their truth. You need to hear my beat." Back then it felt like bravado. Now it feels like smoke before the fire. A former manager tells Rolling Stone off the record, "We always thought he was rehearsing power. Turns out he was hiding something inside the rhythm." Inside the courthouse, the tone shifts, subtly then heavily. Lawyers no longer make eye contact with him between sessions. His entourage, once a silent wall of loyalty, now trickles in late or not at all. On day 29, one of them stands at the edge of the gallery and turns around before sitting down. Leaves, never returns. The courtroom, once tight with scrutiny, is now oxygen-starved with pity. Not empathy, but the kind of pity reserved for men who've built themselves into myths, only to be undone by the silence of others. Then comes day 30. Ariana's seat is empty again, as it has been since the moment she entered. But today, for the first time, Diddy looks at it, not just glances. Looks. There's no lawyer whispering in his ear, no note being passed, just a raw, unguarded second of recognition. His lips twitch, barely, as if to say something, but no sound comes. And in that moment, the courtroom holds its breath. Because what trembles on his face, just for a flicker, is not arrogance, not fury, it's grief, or maybe realization. A look that says, "She never even had to speak to dismantle me." A look that belongs not to a mogul, but to a man finally realizing that control was never ownership, only the illusion of it. His hands can't stay still. During testimonies, they shake subtly under the table. He folds and unfolds them, taps his ring finger, rubs the bridge of his nose. The man who once choreographed empires, who dictated sound and shadow with the precision of a god behind a mixing board, now can't control his own fingers. A juror notices. So does the judge. The room doesn't shift toward drama. It sinks toward inevitability. And somewhere between the trembling hands, the silent chair, and the unread note in his breast pocket, the myth begins to collapse. Not with an explosion, but with a silence so precise it feels composed, like a requiem, for a man who thought no beat could betray him, and who now finds it was silence that always held the power. It starts not with a post, but with a disappearance. 3 images vanish from Ariana Grande's Instagram, all from 2015. No explanation, no replacement, just gaps, like pulled teeth in a smile that no longer needs to pretend. One was from a studio session, captioned with a single rose emoji. One from an after-party, the light hitting her cheekbones like armor. One, blurry, was taken inside a hotel elevator. Now they're gone, and the silence that replaces them is deafening. She doesn't say a word, no tweet, no comment, no repost. But silence, in this case, moves louder than sound. Across timelines, a slow ripple begins. Celebrities don't speak. They shift, quietly. One R&B artist, known for once being signed under Diddy's influence, unfollows both him and 3 of his known producers. No fanfare, just subtraction. Another, more brazen, posts a story that vanishes in 24 hours, but not before being screen recorded by a million eyes. We tried to warn her. They buried our voices under platinum. It's not a confession. It's a funeral hymn for the songs that were never meant to be heard. On Reddit, a thread begins charting the difference in Ariana's vocals between her 2015 and 2016 albums. A music critic posts a deep dive essay titled, Moonlight wasn't a love song, it was a code. They break down lyrics once seen as dreamy and abstract, now sharpened with context. He sees me in a way no one ever has. He makes me feel like I'm safe again. I never knew silence could be this loud. It was always there, but truth has a way of waiting until we're ready to see it. Clips resurface from her 2018 Sweetener tour, one in particular. She's finishing Better Off, a song widely understood as about liberation. And as the last note fades, she turns her back to the audience. The crowd screams. She stands still. Now fans wonder, was that her saying goodbye to something only she knew? A tweet goes viral. We thought she was being dramatic. Maybe she was remembering. On TikTok, creators begin overlaying her 2015 photos with soft static filters and captions like, "She smiled like she was hiding a lock with no key." Even those who mocked her softness now repost clips with reverence, as if trying to apologize through algorithms and duet chains. No one names Diddy directly, but his image has begun to dissolve, not through scandal, but through disassociation. People stop defending, they stop engaging, they simply leave. A mega producer deletes a playlist that featured their collaborations. A luxury brand pulls an ad campaign that once bragged about his fragrance line. The unraveling isn't loud, it's strategic silence, because the culture has learned something. Outrage burns hot, but absence corrodes. One fan creates a side-by-side clip. Left side, Ariana walking backstage in 2015, clutching a coat, eyes low. Right side, Ariana in 2023, exiting a rehearsal studio, alone, but upright. The caption reads, "You never needed to speak, you just needed to survive." And across all of this, she still says nothing. But her nothing speaks louder than every publicist's spin. Some moments aren't announced, they're recognized. And this, the quiet disassembling of a myth, brick by whisper, isn't a cancellation. It's a cultural memory reactivating, like an old file being opened again and finally read with open eyes. Day 24 begins with a different energy. There's no celebrity cameo this time. No gasps, no heels echoing through the marble corridor. Just the slow, careful shuffling of people who were once invisible. People whose names were never printed, whose signatures were on NDAs they barely understood. Former bodyguards, stylists, interns. They don't arrive with entourages. They carry manila folders, USB drives, and that particular kind of silence. The kind that breaks after years of obedience. The first to take the stand is a man with a shaved head and a suit 2 sizes too big. Former hotel security. His voice is flat, but his memory is surgical. He recounts the night in question. August 30th, 2015. He doesn't speak Ariana's name until prompted, but when he does, his eyes lower. There was a guest list, he says. Some names were marked as priority. Hers was flagged as sensitive. No explanation. Just a red tag next to her name on the client sheet. The courtroom stays still, no outbursts. But something shifts, because when systems label a person before they arrive, they're not protecting them. They're preparing for containment. Later, a former stylist steps up, young, nervous. She fidgets with the hem of her sleeve before she speaks. We weren't supposed to touch her without approval. No unscheduled fittings, no unsupervised makeup adjustments. If she asked for something, we were told to say we'd check with the leads. Even lipstick was run through handlers. The defense objects to relevance, but the judge overrules it. Because when you build a cage, it doesn't matter if it's gold. Then comes the tech. A former intern from a studio in Miami, now a software engineer, presents an email chain from a backed-up archive. August 29th, 2015. Subject line, studio session clearance, VMA weekend. In the body of the email, a production assistant asks for confirmation on guest list access. A senior manager replies, AG arrival confirmed. Flag sensitive. No solo recordings, do not release booth logs. No further explanation. No mention of what sensitive entails. Just an unspoken code. The kind everyone in those circles learns not to question, Then a grainy video plays, studio hallway footage, blurred, silent. A timestamp matches the evening of the incident. You can see Ariana, unmistakable even without her face visible, walking quickly. A man follows 3 steps behind, stops when she stops, waits as she vanishes behind a door. It's not proof, it's not even clear, but it feels undeniable. Not because it shows a crime, but because it fits a pattern. And that's what begins to emerge in the courtroom. Not a smoking gun, but a blueprint, an architecture. One witness after another describes an ecosystem, a system built not to attack, but to isolate, to surround, to render people reachable without ever making them seen. Then comes the seating chart, pulled from an archived email to an event planner for the after-party at the Satai Hotel. Ariana's name is listed, not at a central table, not among peers or collaborators. She's seated between 2 senior male handlers, across the table from 2 producers. One of the witnesses, a former assistant who quit weeks later, testifies, she wasn't there to celebrate. She was positioned. She was bracketed. The prosecution clicks through other documents, schedules, guest list revisions, photo approval chains. No one document is damning, but together they feel like fingerprints pressed onto glass. Patterns that weren't visible until someone adjusted the light. A music journalist in the gallery whispers to another, "This isn't a story, it's a scaffold." The defense tries to minimize, calling the chart circumstantial, the footage unclear, the emails industry norm. But the room doesn't hear that anymore. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee the design. The gallery breathes heavier now, not because they've heard something new, but because the familiar has begun to rot under scrutiny. And then a quiet moment. One of the final witnesses of the day, a quiet woman in glasses, a former production scheduler, is asked what she remembered about Ariana's departure that weekend. She doesn't hesitate. She left alone, she says. Pause. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, just walked out the side door at 3:07 a.m. I remember the time because I stayed behind to log the schedule shift. And then she adds, her dress was different. She'd arrived in silver. She left in black. No one speaks. Because no one needs to. Because this isn't an expose. It's an excavation. Layer after layer of dust, secrecy, choreography. Not of one night, but of a machine. A machine that learned how to make silence look like professionalism and invisibility look like protection. The prosecutor closes the day not with an accusation, but a sentence that lands with more weight than any outburst. It wasn't a moment. It was an architecture, built to be soundproof. And now, the walls are echoing. Day 28 begins with a blank chair, where Diddy once sat, jaw locked, gaze controlled, suit always too tailored for humility. There's only an empty space and a folded court program no one claims. His legal team arrives without him. No apology, just a prepared statement slid across the judge's bench. It reads like a resignation dressed in formal wear. Due to ongoing matters of health and legal consultation, Mr. Combs will no longer appear in person for the remainder of these proceedings. No further elaboration. The courtroom doesn't gasp. It exhales. Because the room had been waiting for this, even if no one said it. The man who once built himself into an empire of sound and spectacle is now echoing through absence. But it's what fills that absence that changes everything. The gallery is different today. The front rows aren't packed with reporters or law students taking notes. They're filled with women in black, some older, some younger. None of them speak, but their presence is not quiet. It's deliberate, as if they are there not to watch, but to witness. One of them, the woman from the third row, the one Ariana glanced at on day 21, rises midway through the day. No spectacle, no permission asked. She stands slowly, her spine straight as scripture, and walks out of the courtroom with the precision of someone who's practiced not flinching for years. Outside, a black SUV waits at the curb, the windows tinted, the doors already unlocked. Ariana's inside. She doesn't step out, doesn't look toward the cameras gathering near the barricades. But when the woman climbs in beside her, there's a pause. Not the kind you script. the kind that settles. Then the door closes, just a click, no slam, no statement. But something has shifted. A freelance photographer catches a shot through the SUV's windshield just before it pulls away. It goes viral within minutes. Ariana, sunglasses on at night, her jaw clenched, the outline of her mouth unreadable, lips sealed like a confession. The caption beneath the image reads, "They weren't for fashion, they were armor, against the flash, against history." Back inside the courtroom, the judge doesn't address the empty chair. She simply calls the next witness. But no one really hears them. The room is quieter now. Not out of respect, but because something holy and heavy has just passed through it. Like a funeral procession without music. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes like snowfall in a cathedral. Cold, weightless, inevitable. And in that silence, details begin to flicker across screens outside. Music blogs start dissecting a lyric from Ariana's unreleased demo. One line in particular that never made it to final production. Some doors lock from the inside, some screams get mixed down low. Reddit threads light up, not with rage, but recognition, as if the internet itself had just remembered it was a witness. Back at the courthouse, a reporter leans over to whisper to her colleague, "It doesn't feel like a trial anymore. It feels like a reckoning." No closing arguments are scheduled for the day, no major exhibits introduced. But the hallway outside fills with people standing shoulder to shoulder. No signs, no chants, just presence. Inside, one intern from the court's media team posts a now-deleted tweet. "I've never heard a silence this loud." And maybe that's the point. This was never about proving one moment. It was about dragging an era into the light, not to destroy it, but to name it, to break the spell it cast over so many who thought the silence was theirs to keep. As the judge adjourns for the day, she glances toward the defense table. Then she hesitates, just for a breath, before lifting her gavel. Tap, not a bang, not a verdict. Just punctuation on a chapter that refused to be written for a decade. The gallery doesn't move at first, as if no one wants to be the first to rise. As if breaking that silence would mean accepting it's finally over, or worse, that it never really will be. Because some closures don't come with answers, they come with exits. And tonight, all anyone remembers is a black SUV disappearing into the night, and the glint of sunglasses reflecting 1,000 unspoken truths. And the door? It never slammed shut. It clicked, and sometimes, that's louder. There is no final statement, no verdict, no press conference on courthouse steps. Day 30 ends like a breath held too long, then released into silence. The judge's bench is empty. The attorneys speak only in soft tones. The media cameras remain fixed, waiting for something that may never come. Ariana never returns, not to the courtroom, not to the public eye, not to correct, deny, or confirm. Her silence isn't absence, it's presence, sharpened by everything she didn't say. Somewhere between the final gavel and the dimming hallway lights, a letter begins to circulate online. It's typed, unaddressed. No watermark, no signature, but it bleeds truth in a way that makes people read it twice. One line from the letter clings to screens and timelines like breath on cold glass. He told us the world was his, but we were the world, and we remember. No one can verify its origin, but no one wants to. Because sometimes belief doesn't require proof. It requires resonance. News anchors, roundtable panels, podcast hosts all ask the same question. Will Ariana testify? But maybe the answer is already in the silence. Maybe she already did. In the erased posts, in the withheld songs, in the single glance toward a woman in the third row, in the black SUV that left before dawn, never turning back. Some truths don't need courtrooms. They need witnesses, and now the world is watching, not with noise, but with memory. Because when power tries to bury its past, it forgets one thing. Memory is not a grave, it's a garden. And this, whatever this becomes, will grow, whether anyone wants it to or not. Final image. A fan posts a clip from one of Ariana's earliest live performances. The audio is shaky. She's almost whispering. The crowd barely hears her. But the refrain, wordless, breathy, defiant, echoes across thousands of screens like prophecy. Because some songs don't need verses to become an anthem.